Hello everyone. Just decided to record a Genshin guide for beginners, intermediates, and people that have been playing for a long time. Just want to go over things like just the normal guide. Oh, how to catch up, or I don't know, even just know what to do with your account. So let's get started. First things that you're gonna have to do is choose your character, choose your main character, either Lumine or Aether. Canonically, Aether is the main character, but it doesn't really matter which one you choose. The AR in this game means like a lot because it lets you level up characters, do your domains and everything. So if you're like low AR, you don't have access to like legendary equipment or whatever, which is kind of important if you want to deal damage. So now it's pretty much easier to level up characters. If, for example, you have a, let me just take for example this character, right? If you see the top right, you have a button right there. You're using Xbox, PlayStation, keyboard, or mouse. It's gonna be different, right? So it tells you how to do everything. It's way easier than before. So you can upgrade it. It tells you like if you have the mats and everything. For example, I don't have the mats for her, right? It'll tell you where to go. It'll be like, oh, it's this one. It shows you exactly which one it is. It tells you which weapons can be like perfect for her. Pretty good, to be honest. It's pretty accurate. Like I would personally recommend these weapons. I don't feel like you should change anything from whatever is here. You don't want to waste your mats when you're starting. You don't want to level every character to like 40 or 20 when you're barely starting because you're gonna like need those mats later for other characters you want or you like barely got when you started summoning. So what I would recommend is to get 4 characters. I would myself tell you that I feel like you need uh at least a healer and a DPS. Supports in this game are like pretty broken, to be honest, more than the DPS. For example, Kazuha, he can like throw and then give you a lot of debuffs for the enemy, and then you can deal a lot more damage compared to like when you do it by yourself. My recommendations is you have to pick carefully those 4 characters. Okay, for the characters, I think which like are pretty strong later on in the game. Like if you invest in them starting in the game till end game, you can probably use them. Xiangling, I think they give it out for free. I don't know if they still give it out for free. She's one of the strongest pyro supports, DPS or whatever you want to use it at. Xingqiu, whatever you want to call it, it's pretty strong. He deals damage when he's outside of the field, so it's pretty good for DPSs, especially for reactions, which are pretty important. Official, also the same thing. She deals damage off field. If you have this one, you you just have the best support in the game. You don't even need anything else. Ult, leave, your DPSs deal a lot more damage. If you have him, level him up. You want him in your team, no matter what you're doing, like even reactions or whatever. Sucrose, it's a pretty decent choice. Uh, does a lot of soul damage. If you know how to do reactions and everything, she's gonna be pretty helpful. Also, for debuffing, she's great. So if you have her, that would be a great choice. Diona, I feel like she's a pretty good shielder and healer. Dento reactions, to be honest, if you're early game or mid game, Dendro reactions are pretty OP. So Kole, she applies Dendro pretty much like all time with her ult and her skill. Yao Yao, pretty good Dendro healer. If you want to do some reactions with her, that's pretty good too. Gaming, I myself haven't used him, but I know he's a pretty decent DPS. So if you don't even have like a 5-star DPS you want to use, or like if you even like him a lot for his design or whatever, I would actually recommend gaming if you want to use him as DPS. For 5 stars, early game, you don't need them, to be honest. I feel like every character does decent damage to clear early to mid game. Everything else, it's gonna be up to you what you want to pick. Like I said earlier, I feel like supports are way like useful than DPSs. What to do with your pulls? It's gonna be up to you. So before a year 45, when you have the beginner banner, you never want to waste your primo gems on standard. Never. There's not a reason like, oh, you're close to PD, whatever. Don't use them. Eventually, you'll have like even probably like 9 or 10 5 stars from this banner. Like You don't need to summon, to be honest. There's no reason. For weapon banner, I would recommend for you to have a banner like this one. For me, this is a perfect example. Both of these weapons are great because I like both of these characters. I have them both. So pulling on this banner, if I lose for another weapon, losing to either or. If I lose to a standard weapon, well, that's just bad luck. If you're free to play, just don't do it. It's not worth. It's more worth to get characters than weapons, unless you really like that character and you want to risk it all your summons and everything. Go ahead, but not at all. I wouldn't recommend. For which characters to pull, like I said, supports are great. What makes a DPS great. So if you have like, for example, here Mavwika, she's a great DPS. If you want Mavwika way more than Sitlali, go for Mavwika. There's no thing such as like, well, there's some metas and everything, but like in the end, it doesn't even really matter. Eventually, all your characters, even if you choose like a support, they're gonna help you push to endgame. Of course, there's some characters that like are pretty like, I don't want to say bad, but not as strong. So if you actually worry about like how good are they, you can wait for a guide video. You have the trials and everything. So if you actually want to like see if your character's pretty strong or you like how they play, I'll go ahead and go for them. The only thing that I actually would tell you that's absolutely needed, don't waste your pulls on here. Standard banner is not worth it at all. So I told you the characters I would recommend for you before AR-45, right? You have your team of 4 already. The way to get to AR-45 is wasting your resin, exploring the map. You need to do a lot of story missions, Archon missions, which are pretty important. Opening chest, exploring, doing your events too. It's pretty important. The events, they give you a lot of summons, a lot of primo gems, a lot of materials, which is great. So farming those two like are pretty important. Wasting your resin is also pretty important to get to AR-45. I wouldn't recommend at all grinding out artifacts before AR-45. And once you reach AR-45, you're gonna be like able to get um at least one legendary artifact guaranteed. So that's why AR-45 is pretty important. Before AR-45, to be honest, you just need to be concentrating on your weapon and your talents. If you click here on recommendations, it tells you first, second priority, and then level up as needed. If you're using your DPS and your healer, I would just recommend to level up the first two, leave the last one at level 1. You don't have to waste mats at all. For example, this character, she deals damage with her skill and her ult. So that's all you need to level up. And leveling up your character, which you're gonna need from mats from bosses and everything, that's gonna be your priority. And you're gonna get pretty much like a lot of AR from there. Also, another thing I forgot to say, do your weekly bosses. Those are the mats you're gonna need for your characters. So for example, this one, it's gonna tell you where it is, which one to use. Wasting your resin on that too, it's pretty important because well, it helps you level up your character. It gives you a lot of AR, levels you up faster to reach AR-45. It also gives you the billets, which help you do free to play weapons. So for artifacts before AR-45, unless you have a 4-star or legendary artifacts, I wouldn't recommend you to level it up at all. At least if you have a 4-star artifact or a 5-star artifact, you can use it to feed better ones later on in the game. Blue ones don't give you as much stats or anything that you actually need. So you can equip them. That's like way better than not having nothing, but don't level them up. It's just not worth it. That's the way I would have done it if I was barely starting. Once you farm the artifacts before AR-45, you don't have to worry about anything. You can click the fast equip, click it, and it'll give you a pretty decent one for what you're doing. But after AR-45, I feel like it's pretty important because you want to clear content faster and everything due to the end game of like Spiral Abyss or Imaginary Theater. Seeing what they need tells you the perfect set for them and everything. Everything's shiny, whatever that you actually need. So the recommendations tab is gonna help you pretty much on everything, building every character. Something that I feel is pretty important to do also grinding out your reputation quest on every place. Because like for example over here in Mondstadt, you get a pretty useful gadget which is the TP waypoints. For example, there's some places where there's no waypoint which you want to explore, like for example over here. Reach there faster, having that is pretty useful. To unlock reputation quests, you need to do the stories first. So for the one over here in the UA, you need to finish the Archon quest first, I think. This gadget's gonna change everything, and it's this one. The condensed resin. So for example, I have 195, right? Since you don't want to cap, if you want to keep exploring or whatever, you can leave them for later. Just come over here. Once you have the recipe unlocked, you can use them to grab double the mats quicker and spend your resin faster. I also forgot to talk about this. When you condense your resin, you get this. You can use your points to do your dailies. The long-term encounter points, you gain them by exploring, getting your chest, missions, and everything. So that's why it's even faster to do your dailies once you get the condensed resin. So the teapot is just doing your own base. You can get this to plant your seeds or whatever you need for characters. The shop, you can get this resin. Expires on a week. It's just a free one. Gives you more time to farm. You get mats too, XP, weapon XP, Mora, artifact XP. This is just something I feel like it's pretty useful to have, but if you don't want to do it, it's not needed at all. The reason I feel like reaching AR 45 is important is one, and you unlock this, the Mystic Offering, which is the strong box. So imagine you're farming a set that you actually need. So you have these two sets, right? That both work. You get a lot of artifacts that you don't actually like feel they're strong or like don't have good substats. But you want to get a set that the domain's pretty bad. Like for example, the domain for the artifacts for Hutao, they're pretty bad because the Hutao artifact's pretty strong, but the other one doesn't work at all. So that's the reason it's pretty strong. You can get like all the artifacts that are pretty garbage for you and just put it on a set that you actually need. One of the reasons I also feel like reaching AO 45 it's important is you can take all your characters to level 80. It's gonna help you reach further down, which gives you more rewards and everything. You can start like you can go back and finish this ones, which give you plenty of rewards and summons and everything. And it's gonna make it much easier for you to do end game content on end game content once you get to AR 45. Probably wondering what to do after you get to AR 45. And to be honest, the only thing left to do is to get to AR 60. Grind out your characters, get them to level 90, max them out, max out your artifacts so you have the like a greater DPS and your supports deal more damage. Mainly it after AR 45 is just min maxing your damage so you can reach further in the abyss and you can do the full rewards. That's basically it. Yeah, and that's basically it. Thank you for watching the video. Hope it helped. Bye bye.